Okay, well, I'll kick off our meeting formally here. Thank you, everybody, for joining our event today on seeding rates and on-farm measurements. For those who don't know me, my name is Rachel Rusin, and I coordinate the Kootenay and Boundary Farm Advisor Program. This is an agricultural extension program in the Kootenay and Boundary region, that is funded by the Regional Districts of Central Kootenay, East Kootenay, and Kootenay Boundary, and Columbia Basin Trust. It's my pleasure today to welcome Catherine Tarasoff, who, hi Catherine, who has led these grab and grow research templates and 3 projects to look at soil health, irrigation efficiencies, and seeding rates. And today we're going to hear from Tyler Morrison, a rancher in Cranbrook, who led a project on basically looking at different seeding rates for sorghum sudan grass, and he's going to review his project today. And we're also going to hear from Wayne Ray, a rancher up in Vanderhoof, who did a project a couple of years ago looking at seeding rates for alfalfa. A little background on how these projects came to be and how these on-farm research projects came to fruition is that Catherine and I teamed up through the Farm Adaptation Innovator Program, which is a project of the Climate and Agricultural Initiative of BC. And we were able to receive some funding to do these grab and go research templates for on-farm research. Last week, we heard from Jamie Haynes in Rock Creek, who looked at soil health indicators. And if you would like to see that presentation, that's on the KBFA YouTube channel and website. And today we're specifically looking at the grab and go on-farm research templates for seeding rates and on-farm measurements. And this is the project that Tyler was directly involved with in Cranbrook, and that's what we'll be hearing about today. A little bit of housekeeping. We do have a question and answer box at the bottom of your screen, so you're free to put in your comments, introduce yourself, or any specific questions as they arise during the presentation. We will have lots of time for questions and answers after we hear from Tyler and from Wayne Ray. Danny Smart, you can see her up in the top of your screen. She's a member of the KBFA team, and she's going to support with the technology side of things. She's managing the recording, and she'll be helping with any Q&As that arise during this. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Catherine Tarasoff to take the reins and introduce today's presentation and the project. Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks, Rachel. So I'll just pull up my presentation. All right, everybody, thanks for being here today. I'm going to talk just a little introduction on this concept of producer-led research, also called on-farm research. And, and then I'm going to hand it over to Tyler to talk about his project and Wayne to talk about his project. So, oops, hold on a sec. So first, what is producer-led research? And it's really important to understand that it is site and management specific research that addresses a particular need or question that you have. So it's not meant to be broadly applied across the whole province or even across your region. If enough people do a similar project, then you can start to look at regional implications of your work, but it starts out being very specific to you and your farming goals. It's not meant to be published or undergo any rigorous scientific review, but you do have to follow some experimental design criteria, and this is to make sure that you have confidence in your results. So we will focus a little bit on that in my presentation, and then you'll see it again in Tyler and Wayne's presentation. I have this rule of 10s, so you always need 10 samples, and that's really important because if you were working, let's say in carrots, and all you did was dig up one little shovel full of carrots, or worse yet, pull a single carrot out of a 5-acre field and say, all right, this is what all my carrots look like. You just know that's not true. You have so much variability across your field that you have to sample multiple locations across your field. And I like to think of it like we couldn't go into a grade 5 classroom full of kids and take one child out and say, here's what all kids in BC look like, right? We know that's not true. We know there's tons of variability. So following my rules of 10 will allow you to have confidence in your results and also to see the variability that might occur across your field. It's really important that you don't try to reinvent the wheel. So you want to build from what we already know works, and you want to build on what you know works close to home. So look at what other producers are doing, look at the work that's already happening. Sometimes, like with Wayne's project, he's just tweaking something that he already knows works. So you don't want to try something that you think couldn't work. You want to try something that you know has a good chance of working and it's been tried before, just not on your farm.
And it's pretty much really a movement towards replicated on farm field scale trials, which in my opinion can provide amazing information about what's happening on their own operations.
Danny, are we able to mute people?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to grab them as they come in. I missed that one.
But again, I repeat, there's more than one way to do
I
research.
can't find.
Considering
Oh, I think I found them. I muted them.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, everybody.
Thanks.
All
So,
right.
so I'll just continue. I just want to introduce these grab and go templates that were designed, and each template has a case study. And so this case study in particular is the one from last week. Today we'll be looking at Tyler's case study. The templates aren't really designed to, they're not designed to undo the work that you have to do. They're designed to help you avoid common pitfalls or problems that are sort of common problems that people encounter when they do research for the first time. There's 3 of them, like Rachel showed, and today we're going to be focusing on this testing new crops concept. It's also a seeding rate talk today. If you're more of a row cropper, then you might be more interested in the mulches because the way that you sample is slightly different in row crops than in, say, forage crops. So within the templates, they all follow the same 8 basic steps. And the first step is getting started. And when you're getting started, it's really important that you determine your resources. You need to set aside time to really think about things like how much land can you risk? Do you need special equipment? Do you need labor support? Has anybody in your region done something similar? What were their results? So this is at the kitchen table, really asking yourself and asking your community, your local community and your network of community, some critical questions so that you're prepared for what's ahead. Next, when you determine what to test, this is where you either repeat a study that's in the template or you design one yourself, but it's always best if you do an A/B type study. So today we actually kind of have A, B, C, D, but each one is still subdivided into an A, B, low versus high seeding rate. This is one that's really critical too, and it's determining the best location for your plots. On the left side, you see a picture that shows like this is the wrong way to lay out a design versus the right way to do it. If this was your A and this was your B treatment, your A is up in a high and dry spot in your field, and your B is in a low and wet area. And now you don't know if your results are because your B treatment got more moisture than your A treatment, or if it's truly related to what you did, like the treatments that you applied. It's also important, we have over here this figure, that you put your treatments in an area where they won't be impacted by things like forest edges, that you've got enough room to turn your equipment around if you're using equipment, turn your equipment around and get it up to speed before you continue with your application. Also enough room that you can drive equipment from gate to gate without having to go through your field. In this particular example, we've avoided this wet area. So once you determine where you're going to put your plots, it's also important to decide how you're going to lay them out. And you don't want to lay it out such that you have a huge wet area that sits across one of your treatments, or one of your treatments is too close to the tree line and now the trees are impacting the treatment. When you apply your treatments, it's really critical that you make sure your equipment is calibrated and in good working condition. That is a very common pitfall that occurs, that people go out and they start using their equipment and then they realize it's not calibrated and their seeding rates are way off. So calibrate your equipment, make sure everything's working properly so that when it's time to go, you're ready to go. Harvesting and weighing the samples, this is where my rule of 10 comes in. It's really important that you take 10 samples within each treatment. And whether it's 10 hoops in a forage treatment, in the bottom here, we're doing 10 soil moisture measurements across treatments, 10 water infiltration measurements, which we talked about last week. If you're in row crops, you want 10 1-meter sections from your row, or it could even be 10 individual plants, 10 raspberry bushes, 10 strawberry plants for your yields. But it's important that you always have 10. When you analyze the data and you interpret the results, analyzing the data, because you have 10, now you can do averages, you can look at the range in your data, you can start to think about how much variability there was. And when you interpret your results, sometimes you'll get really obvious results like, wow, the yields were so much better when I used, that combination of varieties. Like, that's a no-brainer. Other times the results aren't so obvious and you think, I don't really see any difference. Well, maybe the difference is in the cost of the application or the ease of the application. Maybe there's an indirect benefit that isn't obvious in terms of just straight up yields. So sometimes you have to think a little more deeply about your results, but often the results are significant. And if you've planned it, then you see the results pretty clearly. So like I said earlier, this won't take out the hard work that you have to do, but it will help you avoid making common mistakes. So sorry, for those of you who are ready, we do have a workshop on February 8th. And now I'm going to quickly hand it over to Tyler because I have a coughing attack coming.
Okay, well, thanks, Catherine. Are you going to bring up the presentation?
Yeah, I think she's bringing it up here. I'm speaking for her while she does her coffees.
All this week, I'm in the same boat as Catherine. We've getting over not feeling well for the last week or so. So putting together, we've been working together and coughing away through Zoom. So it's been an interesting process.
Fantastic. And I see Catherine is
back to school today. So.
Oh, well, thanks for joining us, Tyler. And I see Catherine's had to depart for a moment. And is she going to be advancing the slides for you, Tyler?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Okay,
And oh, she's back. So yeah, I just wanted to introduce you, Tyler, because can you please just introduce where you ranch, how long you've been ranching for, and the type of operation that you have?
yeah, you bet. That's my first slide, Rachel.
Okay, sorry. And I was just stepping in for Catherine, so sorry to her budging
You're
in.
good. So hi, everyone. My name is Tyler Morrison. I ranch with my parents and my brother. We have our main ranch is right at Wardener. So right after the bridge, right at between Cranbrook and Jaffrey, right at the bridge that goes over Kootenays. Our operation, we have a cow-calf operation, about 350 pairs. And we also have about 500 acres of irrigated hayland with a couple hundred acres of dry land, pastures / extra fields to try new things on. So my parents, our main crops consist of alfalfa grass mixes under irrigation with green feed annuals in our reestablishing years. And so my parents, we've ranched here since 1973. My parents originally had a ranch on the river bottom below the Wardener Bridge, and then we were expropriated from the Libby Pondage, and then they purchased this ranch that we call home now. Our home ranch, the soils are quite sandy, really sandy with low water holding capacities. We like to refer to ourselves as Little Vesuvius because the weather patterns and the rainstorms seem to divert right over top of us, and they go up the Bull River drainage or down the river towards Grasmere and Jaffrey area. So we are quite semi-arid region, or little nook anyways. Also, our valley, our irrigation comes from the creeks in our valley, and the valleys, like everywhere, is becoming more inhabited, and with lower snowpacks, our irrigation levels are becoming less and less for available water. So like most cattle operations, our goal is to try to figure out ways to increase our winter forage for grazing purposes. Everybody knows that every day we don't have to roll a bale out is definitely affects our bottom line in a positive way. So we're always looking for ways of increasing that ability to not have to feed as long as we can. Our one limitation is we do have Bayer crop science, and we do allow them to do seed trials on some of our land in that area. And so we're limited to not growing brassicas as one of our brain ideas that we can come up with in the winter months. So, yeah. So I had this field. I had this 30 acres. Little background on the field is it was seeded about 15 to 20 years ago. It was originally used for maybe one crop of hay if the spring was a good wet spring, where we were able to get a crop worth cutting, and then it's been mostly used for grazing. But over the last few really hot, dry summers, the field literally got burnt and it had become quite weedy and non-productive. A little bit of history on it too is that it's not elk fenced, and the rest of our fields are, so it is susceptible to a lot of pressure from elk, and it's not irrigated. And as everyone can see on the map, it is between two main highways. So as my dad wanted to point out, he didn't appreciate me putting a trial where everyone can see if it was going to be a failure or not. But as you can see, I don't listen very well. So we'll move on to the next slide. So in the winter months, the one thing my dad does appreciate and passed on to me is that we do like to try new things. We aren't afraid to always try new things. So while researching in the winter and trying to figure out and go through what we'd be able to try, sorghum sudan grass continued to appear to be a possible fit for our climate and for a field like this and for what our needs are. Some of the literature shows that it's extremely high yielding, fast growing. The new hybrids allow you to graze it to a certain level, and then it has the ability to grow again. It has the ability for drought tolerance. It actually can go dormant in long periods of drought, and then once you receive moisture again, it will grow out of the dormancy. And some of the literature and varieties claim to be elk and wildlife resistant, like that they would not prefer to eat it. So I had my aha moment, and so we move to the next slide. So I was really optimistic that I had found the solution or something we could try for this field. I was able to source 2 varieties from a Calgary place. That was the one dilemma we had, was when we did finally come up with this idea. It was the beginning of COVID, and being able to find seed and get it across the border was very difficult. So I did source some from Calgary. One was a sorghum sudan cross, and the other one was a hybrid sudan grass. So my objective was to determine which seeding rates and varieties would have the best yield. And so through the literature I read and through the recommendations from the advisors from this program, the literature I gained was the recommended seeding rates was between 12 and 30 pounds, with 15 pounds being the ideal for dryland conditions. So we ended up doing a trial with the 2 varieties at 2 different seeding rates, one at 15 pounds and one at 25 pounds an acre. Okay, so I had that field. It was 30 acres. The previous fall, I disked the entire field twice to break up the sod and allow it to decompose over the winter. While walking the field in the spring with, I believe, Rachel, Catherine, and Mike Momberg, to lay out the plot and to come up with the trial. The spring plan was decided to use the 20 acres that consisted and removed more of the variables from the field. So in Catherine's earlier presentation, any of the shaded areas from the trees, the field is quite consistently level, and soil profile is fairly consistent. So we had a perfect site for 4 5-acre plots. So knowing that the moisture was going to be my main variable in this trial, I disked and rolled the field early spring to make a firm seed bed and to try to lock in any moisture that we received in the spring. 3 weeks before the planned seeding date, I sprayed with Roundup to get any weeds that were proceeding, so the seed bed had no competition. And the land that was disked around the plot, I seeded with oats early May, just to have something in the ground and compare how the oats would do in that dryland idea. The field was already in plan for seeding in late May. The key factor with sorghum as a warm season grass is they recommend waiting for your soil temperature to be 15 to 18 degrees. So that was what we were waiting for as the main determining factor. Mother Nature had different plans. We had a super wet, super cold spring, summer, and it was really hard to sit there and watch my oats grow really well and have my field sitting there bare, beautiful, not seeded. So it was a hard thing to swallow, but it's what we do for trials, right? Next slide. Oops, sorry, I wasn't ready. No, wait, where are we here? So it was really hard to wait. Soil temperature had to be 15 degrees. So we had to wait till June 22nd. At that time, though, the soil moisture was perfect. The conditions were ideal to plant. Rachel and Catherine came out to spot me and make sure I was driving straight and make sure the drill wasn't plugged. At one time, one of the rungs plugged. So it was great to have those extra eyes on the ground to give me a flag down and stop and correct that problem, so that the trial was seeded accordingly. So the day after I seeded the trial, I applied 50 pounds of nitrogen to the trial, and that night it rained. So it was, once again, everything was going great. The seeds in this picture, the seed germinated quickly, 2 to 3 days after seeding. Seeding depth was the 1 inch. And so everything was perfect. I was looking like a genius. Great. I was happy I put it right beside the highway. And then it stopped raining. We had no rain the rest of the summer at all. The plants started off really strong. They even through the drought and with the poor soil holding capacity of the moisture that we did receive, the plants were doing great, and I was really impressed. But then over time, my oats were burning off, but the field remained fairly strong. Then mid-August, the crop was looking great. It was great haying weather, still hadn't received any moisture. Weather was about 30 to 35 degrees for July and August, pretty much. And so we were busy haying. I kept driving home to go get supplies at night after baling, and driving by the field being super impressed. And then I remember specifically one night coming home, looking out there, and it was 35 degrees and the wind was blowing, and you could just tell the plants had hit their wall. Like they were starting to curl, the leaves were starting to brown. This was about the second week of August, and I was disappointed because I knew the field day was coming, and every day after that it just dried down even more. So this is a picture from the field day. As you can see, though, the plants still remain green and quite alive. They had definitely gone into a dormant state, and just drying down some of the leaves, but the main plants themselves had green stalk. So it showed the strength of being able to go dormant in this weather. And maybe so we were optimistic that some quick fall rains would maybe bring it up and continue to grow. At the field day, the ground temperature was actually 2 to 4%. So there was no moisture available for anything. It was a desert. So the results. So on the day of the field day, and the tour, all results are in wet weights. Though the plants were bone dry, the 10 hula hoops, like Catherine had mentioned, they took the measurements and separated out the weeds versus the crop, even though there wasn't very many weeds, even in the low yielding crops. The best yielder was this hybrid sudan grass at 15 pounds. So the insights from my trial is the theory we came up with from the field day was that the lower seeding rates and had higher yields, probably due to the less competition and plants stand for that moisture, so they were able to not compete against each other. So in future trials or experiments, I would try maybe a 15 pound an acre or a 10 if you're dealing with severe dry conditions like we were that year. The other thing I did was, and I may pursue further, is that I had a half a bag of each variety left over. So I did put it into my barley stubble under our pivot irrigation. So I seeded that in late July, and by field day, it had grown to the same height as the trials. So it did very well in that condition. So I do see potential with it being like a second crop that you may be able to follow an early green feed crop with no-till sorghum for grazing in the fall. The one negative part about sorghum is it is drought or it is frost intolerant. And so that's what happened to the trial, along with my trial in under pivot, was we got an early kill frost in the second week of September, right after the field day. So we all left the field day thinking, well, hopefully we get some fall rains and the sorghum regrows and we can have a look at the potential. And we had -8 or 9 the week after, and it wiped out the whole crop. And the one other conclusion that I drew from this is that the claims of the wildlife not liking it is a complete fallacy. By the time I got my cows home that fall, the field was bare. The elk had cleaned it right up. So that part of the experiment was proven to not be the case. So yeah.
Myself. Thank you, Tyler, or Wayne, Tyler, thank you. So we're gonna hold questions like Rachel said until the end. And I'm just wondering, is Wayne Ray here? Was he able to get on? Do you see him, Danny?
I don't see him yet, Catherine.
There is
While
a
we-
second Catherine Tarasoff on. I don't. Oh, I see him nodding. So you're on mute.
And while he pulls up his presentation,
There,
just good job, Tyler. That was really great. It's nice to see photos of the trial you did, and those are great take homes. So thanks so much. I look forward to the Q&A at the end. That was awesome.
Am I screen sharing?
Yep, that's working, Catherine. Right now we see, Wayne Ray, Smith Creek Farms.
Okay, so I'm gonna mute myself again, and I'll continue to advance the slides, and I'll hand the podium here over to Wayne.
Okay, we're located about 50 miles due west of Prince George, kind of southwest of Vanderhoof. And Smith Creek Farms is a medium-sized farm for our area. We have about 2,500 acres of land. It's mostly flat ground. I purchased an original 40 acres in 1977, and then while logging and clearing land for other people, we started to accumulate more land and clear more of our own land. And we built up through ag leases and mostly buying private land. And we were a cow-calf operation for about 20 years. But I've always been experimenting with different crops. I grew up on my parents' farm, which was about 5 miles down the road. And we have a total of 42 fields ranging in size from about 2 acres up to about 90 acres. And we only have about 850 or 900 acres that's in actual production of one form or another. Most of our land was all trees and stumps when we purchased it. So we spent a pile of time and money to try to get it in production. And most of the soil is a silty clay loam, and in the area where the test field was, it's about 500 feet deep. But our soil is quite variable. There's more silt, or in some areas more clay and more sand in other areas, and we have very little rock, which is a good thing. But we tend to try different things on different years, and since about the mid-1990s, we've been having elk problems also. And we have trouble with our crops used to last about 15 years or more with alfalfa. And now that we've had elk come in, they start pawing the fields in the wintertime when there's between 8 inches and about 2 feet of snow, and they kill all the alfalfa, winter kills, so it really causes problems. We used to have heavy snow in the fall, like about a foot of snow in the fall before we got any major freezing temperatures. And that foot of snow would insulate the ground. We'd wind up with anywhere from about 36 to 60 inches of snowfall. And that worked really well. But recently, we've been getting wet falls with freezing rain and minus 20 or minus 30 Celsius. The ground gets frozen, and we've only had a foot or two of snow over the winter. And then when the snow melts in the spring, it doesn't permeate the ground, it just runs off. Since about 2002, we've had a drought cycle in our immediate area where we've only had between 25 and 50% of our previous rainfall during the April to October growing season, and compared to the previous 30 years. We have these cold, dry, windy spring seasons with little rainfall in April, May, or June. And as a result, we don't start getting rain until July and August when we're trying to cut hay. And the second cut winds up sometimes not being taken off at all, or taken off in September, or even a few times in October. And then the alfalfa is regrowing in dry conditions, and it's really prone to injury. Low snow levels around here haven't been good for us. And in previous years, I've tried seeding some variety mixes of alfalfa, and I thought it did reasonably well. But I've always planted seed strips and seed plots and just visually looked at them and kind of try to decide which is a better one by doing that. But with Catherine's research idea, it worked a lot better. We selected this varieties, and our goal was to save some money on seed and machine crop cost and increase our yields. And I tried to determine which seeding rate was better, because in the past I'd had conversations with people like Dan Undersander, who is a major alfalfa guy, and I see lots of my neighbors telling me they plant 5 or 6 pounds of alfalfa per acre, but I notice their fields are being reseeded after 5 or 6 years. So I planted this varieties of alfalfa that I thought might do good here. We tested a 5-way blend of alfalfa against a single variety of Vision alfalfa, and also tested a low versus a high seeding rate, 12.5 pounds versus 25 pounds. And for doing the project, I picked a field that had been in grass for several years, and then we quit cutting it, and we used it for pasture for quite a few more years, and it was basically flat. It was an area we could do long, straight strips on, and we set up strips, parallel strips of and seeded like 150 or 200 foot wide strip, whatever it was, to Vision alfalfa at 15 pounds to the acre, and then right next to it we planted another strip of Vision alfalfa at 25 pounds to the acre, and then we planted another strip of the 5-way blend of alfalfa at 15 pounds or 12.5 pounds, and then we went with the other strip at 25 pounds. And anyhow, the field preparation, what we did, we used a brilliant 12-foot brilliant seeder, and we originally we disked that field at multiple angles, different angles with a disc, and then drug it and then packed it and then seeded it with a brilliant seeder, then packed it again. And it was seeded on June 22nd. And the packing is really important to get good seed contact with alfalfa. In the establishment year, we did a weed cut because it was pig weeds and a couple of other weeds came up in there. So we clipped it all off. In the bottom circle in that slide, it shows little alfalfa plants coming up underneath. And by the next year, all the pig weeds and all the other weeds were gone, and most of it was gone, and the alfalfa was doing quite well. We had some pretty good yields, and before we did our cut, we'd go out with the ATV. I would do a long strip down there and use the system of throwing the hoop out 10 times on each strip, and then counting all the plants to see what the survival rate was. And then we clipped and weighed it and separated the weeds and grass out from the alfalfa, and came up with the results that I had. And the vision at the low amount and at the 25 pound, there was a bit of difference, but the 5-way blend at the low amount was a little bit better than the vision at a high amount, and then the high 5-way blend was really good. And the amount of weeds that was in there in the vision, it didn't seem to make much difference, and the number of plants didn't seem to be too much difference. But on the 5-way blend, there were less weeds because the 5-way blend seemed to outcompete the weeds better. And then with the high level of seeding, it was basically almost pure alfalfa because the plant's density was thick enough that it appears to have crowded out all the weeds. And this photo here shows a different field where the elk had moved in. We got over 500 bales off of a 80-acre field each year for about the first 3 or 4 years. Then 300 elk moved in. The second year after the elk were there, the production went to about half. And by the third year of having elk in there, we got 36 bales off of that field. You could see that crop wasn't worth cutting. And in my test plots, I only went for 3 years because we had a bunch of elk moved in, and they pawed some areas of the field and didn't paw other areas of the field. So we couldn't really do a longevity measurement on that field. So, and in the following years, each year we seeded about 140 acres each year using 5 or 6-way blends of alfalfa. And some of those blends are taproot, some are open crown, some are spreader type varieties. And I feel that like in a good year or certain years that one variety will thrive when there's more rainfall. Other ones work better, maybe or handle the drought better. Some handle elk damage better. Some will help handle the freezing better. So a mixture of varieties, I think, makes quite a difference. And another field that I'd planted, after 19 years, there were, out of 6 varieties that were in there, you could still distinctly see the three of those 6 varieties were still doing quite well. And if you're going to do on-farm research, it's best to do it on your own land with field-sized trials, instead of relying on little plots on somebody else's land where the soil and climate might be different, because we have lots of microclimates, especially in our area. There are some areas have like 40 or 50 frost-free days, and other ones have 130 or 140 frost-free days, and the rainfall is really variable depending on which areas, and the soil type is really, really different. So sandy soil we find doesn't work as well for alfalfa as the clay soil. So we try to target clay soil with more alfalfa and more grass on just the sandy soils.
Great. Thanks, Wayne. So I didn't get a chance to say that, but Wayne participated in the original on-farm demonstration manual that is available through the BC Forage Council. And that project, that's what sort of spawned the grab and go templates. That manual is free to download, and there's 4 participating producers, of which Wayne was one, and all up in the Vanderhoof Fort Fraser area. So lots of interesting projects up there too for people who want to look at some more on-farm research that's been conducted in the province. So Rachel, do you want to turn it over to the floor?
Absolutely, and I just want to extend a extra, applause to Tyler and Wayne for fantastic presentations. It's so great to hear about your processes on how you decided what you wanted to trial, including how you got to the layout and design that you did based on your own microclimates, soil, and your production style as well. And so thanks so much for sharing. Those are great presentations. And I do at this point want to open it up to the audience. If anybody has a question that they would like to pose, you can unmute or you can type it into the chat box. And oh, I see Mike here.
Well, those were both wonderful presentations, and I really, I think we really owe a debt of gratitude to both Wayne and Tyler for undertaking this work and sharing the results with us. That certainly adds to everybody's knowledge base, and I certainly appreciate the efforts that they've taken to do that, and it's great that they're able to share it with us in a way that's meaningful. Wayne, I was going to ask you, you mentioned that the high seeding rate of the 5-way blend pretty much took out all of the weeds. Did it take out the grasses as well?
It took out most of the grasses as well. Like we find here, if we plant alfalfa, I usually plant at about 20, between 20, over the years, I've tried all different amounts, but recently I usually plant about 25 pounds to the acre. And it takes about 10 years or more before the grass starts to sort of dominate the alfalfa or be really heavy in the alfalfa. And by the time 15 or 20 years comes, usually the grass is really taken over and it has to be renovated. But the elk are the new thing in there that we have to renovate a lot more often. And since I did that plot there, I invested in a power harrow that has reduced my overall costs of getting the land in production.
Good. Thanks, Wayne.
I have a question for Tyler. I thought it was really interesting with your trial that the lower seeding rates were higher yielding. And I was just curious if that was your presumption going into the trial, or if you intuitively thought that the higher seeding rates would get higher yields.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would assume the higher seeding rates would have, and if there was ample moisture, you would have more plant stand, especially the way the sorghum is. I believe the yield would have been in the hula hoop, you'd have way more plants. So you would have had, the yield would have been substantially more. But being that water was the limiting factor, like everyone agreed that it must have been the decrease in competition that allowed those plants to grow just a little bit more. So no, it wasn't what I was thinking, for sure.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And I thought that was such a neat outcome for your project. And once again, just speaks to the the great ability of doing your on-farm research and experimenting with those 2 seeding rates, because now you're informed for if you were to plant another crop on dry land, you would sort of have that perspective of like moisture competition.
Mhm.
We
I think
do
for
have,
us with that variety, sorry, I think for me, it was good to see what it did in our region, because I also had that intimidation factor that it was going to grow 15 feet tall. And so that was my hesitation of putting it under my irrigation to begin with, because then I was worried, what the heck am I going to do with 15 feet of biomass if it was ready and I had to cut it, because we just don't have the silage equipment and to drying capacity so there was that, to be able to see what it does in your region and with your moisture, and it takes away some of those unknowns to try other things. So
fantastic. Thank you, Tyler. We do have a question from Peter Tresher, and I feel like this is the elephant in the room that we could just chit chat all day about, is elk. Both of you discussed it extensively in your presentations, and Peter asks to Wayne if you have any elk exclusion fencing in your area.
We haven't had any. We tried to get some, but the Ministry of Environment around here or the wildlife groups don't want anybody excluding a field. I was in the wildlife damage program for several years, and all they wanted was little cages to determine how much damage was done. But because 90% of the damage from elk is done between the end of October and the end of June, that area was excluded from any compensation if it had damage during that time period. And all we have is these little cages. They say we can't fence out an entire field or even 10 acres in the field because it would disrupt the movement of other wildlife. So I'd like to have the ability to fence a perimeter all the way around our place. But right now we have 14 moose eating out of their bales. But the only reason they're there now is because the elk haven't been here all winter until just about the 20th of January. There was 10 elk in the area. But it's really unusual this year. I think we had too much snow all at once, and they remained in somebody's bales on the other side of the river.
Thanks, Wayne. I think, I don't know if Peter wants to reply to that. It's just fascinating. Just this issue is definitely prevalent in East Kootenay, Northern British Columbia. It's ongoing challenges. So thank you for sharing your experiences with that. Does anybody else have a question today? And okay, I'll just I'll cold question to Wayne and Tyler. Have you been inspired to do more on-farm research through your experience with working with Catherine on these grab and go templates? Or Wayne, it wasn't a grab and go for you, but did this kind of set you up to ask more questions in the future?
Yes, I've done more things. Like I used to do cover crops, and we hadn't done it for years. And then a couple of years ago, I tried planting oats along with alfalfa, and the oats grew 5-6 feet tall, and it didn't do the alfalfa a lot of good because I don't think there was enough moisture for both. And the oats seemed to grab all the moisture from the alfalfa, so the alfalfa was held back. And the oats did really well, but we wound up cutting and baling the oats and wrapping it in the fall. And those fields, the following years, the yields weren't as good. There was more grass came in than the ones where I didn't have a cover crop. But on years in the past, when we had lots of moisture, the cover crop actually seemed to work pretty good. But when it's really dry, the cover crop seemed like the oats outcompeted the alfalfa.
Okay, so very weather dependent and site specific. How about you, Tyler? Inspiration to continue with more on-farm research?
Yeah, it was good to revisit this. Like it's been 2 years. And so right now we're just sitting down having the conversations of how we want to do, what we want to do next year, and trying to nail down or source out seed. And that's gonna, with the price of fertilizer and the price of seed and availability, people might be forced to be more creative this year. And so I mean, one of the knocks I've always heard or when comments were made that sorghum seed is quite expensive. But it's $2.99 a pound, the ones I sourced. And the Italian ryegrass or alfalfa this year, it's $5 plus. So we usually plant Italian ryegrass to graze in our barley crops. So I might actually try the sorghum again because it'll be a cheaper alternative than to try the ryegrass. Yeah, it's got my experimental juices flowing. I'm working with the agrologists here. It's not reinventing the wheel, but it's something new for us. I'm going to try to no-till in some peas and barley. We've never grown peas into our green feed. And once again, I've got my dad scared that we're not going to be able to dry it down. So we're arguing over the percentage of stand, but I'm going to try double seeding and maybe increasing my peas in my second seeding so that I can fix that nitrogen, because it's my reestablishing year. I'm giving that field a rest, and I'm hoping to get the benefits of the nitrogen of the peas into that soil. But once it's a 110 acre field, so my dad's going a little crazy that I'm trialing on 110 acres. But hey, whatever.
Maybe leave a strip without the peas. That would be neat to do. Just consider that, leaving a strip option just to compare A versus B as you keep your research juices flowing.
Yeah, you got to keep him alive, keep his heart going, right? So
I have a question for Wayne, because I've presented quite a bit of your results over the years. I'm just wondering, has there been uptake in the larger geographic area? Have people that started doing more variety blends in their seeding? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, sorry about that. I thought I unmuted myself. There's one guy north of Fort Fraser who has been doing alfalfa trials, but I think he's only ever tried maybe one variety and one blend. But he generally, what he did, he had a field that I didn't think was a very good field, but he tried about 20 different varieties of alfalfa on strips about 100 or 150 feet wide for a half mile long, facing north and south. And his soil was variable, and there was some areas that certain varieties did well where it was more sandy loam type soil, but other varieties didn't do well at all there, but they did better where there was more clay. And in the Vanderhoof area, most people say the clay ground grows alfalfa way better than the sandy loam stuff. And I've also found that. Although one neighbor one time, he planted a blend of, I think it was a 6-way blend of alfalfa on a south-facing slope of sandy ground, and he got 6 or 7 tons per acre off it for several years. And that finally, I think it lasted for probably 15 years in there. But I think what it was, there was some underground water, and the alfalfa roots would have to go down 20 feet or so or whatever to pick up that moisture. And the year of establishment, he had really good rain. And the following 2 years or 3 years, he had really good rain because he had such a heavy crop of alfalfa. It was just wasted because it turned black before he could get it baled. Turned it about 6 times.
Yeah, I like that your project, one of the quotes or, you know, that in Wayne's case study is that just looking out at the fields, he couldn't really see a difference. And then when he threw his hoops, that's when, you know, sort of like the details become apparent once you sample those 10 samples per test plot. And it really reinforces what producers were already, you know, intuitively knew and were working with, but didn't have the, you know, the data to back it up. So I just think that it's really cool to take and important to take practices and observations and put some science and data behind it.
Yeah, I had another field that I put in, I think, 6 or 7 varieties years ago. And for the first 2 or 3 years, there was just visibly, there was 2 or 3 varieties that really outshone the other ones. And part of my experiment was using some varieties that were supposed to be really wet tolerant, almost as wet tolerant as reed canary grass, I was told. But those wet areas, the alfalfa died out by the second year, even with the wet varieties. But that field has been in for, just trying to think how long it is now, I think 2006, and it's still there. But it's, some areas are ready to be reseeded. But last year when I was cutting, I could see this, some difference in the strips on there. But that one also, elk have moved in, and there's some areas that are almost bare and some areas still look pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what, I think that comment also is important for people on this webinar is that that Wayne custom blended and chose his varieties and equal proportions. So if you just go to like, what is it, Brett something, seed producer or seed seller, Brett Young, you're not guaranteed to get, you know, like I think maybe Mike is the person that told me this, that the seed mix will contain those varieties, but not necessarily in any particular proportion. So custom blending your own seed mix is really important. It doesn't cost anymore.
Yeah, I usually go and get seed with equal amounts of each variety, but I have bought pre-blended ones from like Brett Young and these other companies before, and then found out that the more expensive varieties, they only put about 5% of that variety in, and the really cheap stuff that doesn't do very well, they put like 40 or 50% of one single variety, and then 20% of a couple other varieties, and then the expensive seeds, they just put a little wee bit in there. So you really can't get an advantage by having a blend and finding one that's going to survive a long time.
No. So that's a word of caution. And also that custom blending doesn't cost anymore. I don't think it costs extra.
I don't think it costs extra.
No.
I tried 3 strips of corn here, grazing corn, a few years ago, and the one variety did absolutely nothing. Hardly, like probably 10% of the seeds germinated in our situation, and what did germinate only grew a foot high. Another variety, most of the seeds germinated, but it would only grow about 3 feet high. And the third variety, pretty well every seed germinated, and it grew between 6 and 8 feet high. And then I was short of pasture because it was a dry year, and I turned my cows in there, and they just made trails in it for a while until a couple of young ones decided to finally test it, and then it was vaporized in about 3 days. But I don't have cows right now, so it's a waste of time trying to do corn anymore.
Well, thank you so much, Wayne and Tyler and Catherine. Do we have any more questions from the audience? And if not, I would like to bring this meeting and great presentation to an end and just really I'm inspired by the work that you both have done on your farms, that we collectively in the province can foster more farmer-led on-farm research that we can then share out with other producers. And that's what this is all about, to inspire, support, and then promote more farmer-led research so that we can have results for our microclimates and our small farms in British Columbia that we can then share with our farming neighbors, have confidence in those results, and build on those. So thank you so much, Wayne and Tyler, for sharing your experiences and getting your feet wet and doing experiments on your farm. If for those on the call who want to dive into their own on-farm research this year, we do have a workshop next week, February 8th, same time. You can find that information on the KBFA website. If you want to throw at Catherine and I your research ideas for this year, we can help you work through your ideas so that you can also do a trial this season. So thank you so much and have a fantastic day, everybody.